Starting in 2007, the world entered a global economic crisis and the price of oil plummeted. Suddenly, all of Venezuela's wealth disappeared, and all of the goods citizens had been importing from neighbor countries, goods like food and clothing, were no longer affordable. When Nicolas Maduro, a loyal Chavista, took over after Chavez's death, he inherited an economic basket case. But instead of implementing reforms to restore functioning markets, Maduro doubled down on socialism.
Modelo económico, social y político que trascienda el capitalismo, que supera el capitalismo con todos sus males. ¿Cuál es la verdadera línea y la ruta de transición económica al socialismo? ¿Cuáles son los modelos productivos socialistas en el campo industrial, en el campo tecnológico, en el campo agroindustrial, en el campo financiero? En todos los campos de la dimensión económica.
What did the government do when it suddenly ran out of the cash it needed to buy political stability? Maduro's cronies simply printed more money, lots of it. Expanding money and credit is a favorite trick of bankrupt governments, but it's the economic equivalent of giving a junkie another hit. It feels good, but it only makes things worse. Inflation is the ultimate tax on the poor, as money in their pockets becomes increasingly worthless. 20,000 Bolivar notes are worth less than $6, and inflation rates are in the triple digits with no end in sight. When things started to spin out of control, why didn't the government reverse course? One reason is the toxic ideology of socialism. One of Maduro's top advisors is Alfredo Serrano, a Marxist intellectual from Spain. Maduro calls him the Jesus Christ of economics. Think about that for a minute. With the presumption of omnipotence, why wouldn't they just ignore the warning signs of the calamity to come? Serrano is the one who convinced Maduro that Venezuelans were starving because of too little government control, not too much. He's also the guy who came up with the heartless idea of keeping citizens imprisoned in the country, preventing them from crossing the border into Colombia to buy groceries for their families. All of this has made the current situation in Venezuela feel like an episode of The Walking Dead, but this is not fiction. We read horrific stories in the news every day. One man was caught stealing the equivalent of $5 out of desperation. For this petty crime, an angry mob slashed him, doused him in gasoline, and set him on fire. The state-run mental hospitals, out of money and out of medicine, have become terrifying torture chambers, with patients strapped to beds and left to die. The devastation wrought by socialism has turned people into animals, and animals into a starving public's last resort for food. Dogs, cats, and even rats are being hunted in the streets by moms desperate for something, anything, to feed their children. The food situation has become truly desperate. In 2016, 90% of Venezuelans said they didn't earn enough money to adequately feed themselves, and over the course of that year, a majority of citizens lost significant amounts of weight. Meanwhile, Venezuela has become a full-blown police state. In 2016, 28,000 Venezuelans died due to violence, with 5,000 of those attributed to resisting authority. That puts a chance of dying a violent death at almost 1 in 1,000, an unbelievable number for any country that's not an active war zone. Law enforcement has become largely unofficial, with most of Maduro's dirty work handled by colectivos, essentially vigilante thugs who claim a devotion to revolutionary socialism. This allows the official police to distance themselves from violence, while protesters and dissidents are still treated cruelly. Those who are critical of the socialist government's policies are made to disappear. You would think that the legacy of Hugo Chavez, the death and poverty that is occurring under the socialist government he helped build, would be obvious. A brutal dictator who starved and oppressed his own people for the sake of power. But not everybody sees it this way. Former President Jimmy Carter mourned Chavez's death, crediting him with improving the lives of millions. Filmmaker Michael Moore praised Chavez for using oil money to provide free health care and education, ignoring the food shortages and the civil liberty violations. They weren't alone. Other celebrities were taken in by Venezuelan propaganda. What the hell does it matter with these people? Why can't they see that socialism in practice is a humanitarian disaster, a deadly ism where the lives of people are callously sacrificed on the altar of authoritarianism, sacrificed to a cause that degrades the well-being of each of us as individuals.
Muchas personas han creído por mucho tiempo en Venezuela que todo se resume a un tema democrático, de elección, de la opinión del pueblo, del voto mayoritario, olvidándose de que lo más importante es un sistema de rule of law o de Estado de Derecho. Formalmente ya no solo es una república socialista al margen de la Constitución del 99, sino que también formalmente es un país en cuyos valores e ideales de Estado de Derecho y de democracia ya no existen, ya no aplican. Y esto es interesante además por quizás otro factor. Muchas personas piensan que la salida de la situación política, económica y social en Venezuela pasa por una nueva elección. Sin embargo, solamente se pueden dar elecciones en países con sistemas de libertad, donde la gente pueda votar con libertad de pensamiento, libertad de expresión, libertad de asociación. Y tales cuestiones, es decir, derechos individuales, no existen en Venezuela.
Let's hope that the people of Venezuela successfully rise up and reject every vestige of Chavismo from their country. The lesson for the rest of us is simple. When governments centralize power and attempt to redesign economic life from the top down, things never turn out as promised. Socialism kills.